Good morning and welcome to another edition of Your Life, Your Voice. My name is Shirley Skipperis and welcome to everyone on YouTube land. And I'd like to welcome my co-host, Claire Thomas. How are you, Claire? Welcome to another edition of Your Life, Your Voice. My name is Shirley Skipperis and welcome to everyone on YouTube land. And I'd like to welcome my co-host, Claire Thomas. How are you, Claire? Welcome to another.
Okay, so all's well now. We continue. Yeah, I'm good, thank you. So let's go ahead.
Okay, so today we have some special guests, and for the first time, we're interviewing two people at the same time. So we're really excited about this prospect. First, I'd like to welcome Jane Rosengrave. I hope I pronounced that right.
Yep, Rosengrave, yep.
So Jane is from the First Nations, artist and self-advocate. So
Yep.
welcome, Jane.
Thank you.
And also we have Pauline Williams, who's a project coordinator for AMIDA. AMIDA is Action for More Independence on Dignity and Accommodation. And I suspect that this program will be focusing on the core fundamental business of AMIDA's core business. So welcome, Pauline.
Thank you.
Cool. So fumble from Julie's side. Claire, what do you think? We start with acknowledgement of country, and because we have a First Nations person here, Jane, we'd like to invite Jane to do the acknowledgement of country. Is that okay, Jane?
Yeah, that's very important. So
what an honour. What an honour. Welcome.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Hi, everybody. My name's Auntie Jane, and I'd like to begin by paying my respects to the Wurundjeri people, to the traditional custodies of this land, where we're meeting upon today for its elders and past and present, and even for the self-advocacy people who have passed away and who are still here today on Aboriginal land. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Jane, and what a privilege to have Jane with us today. So, yeah, it's really great, Jane.
Thanks, darling.
So, how about we start off with a few questions? Is that okay with everyone?
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. So, we'll just do a to and fro between Jane and Pauline.
Yep.
So, would you like to tell us a little bit about your background?
Yep.
You start, Jane.
Okay, Pauline. I was taken away from my family at the age of 6 months old, and I was put into a Lambie, Toronto, and Nazareth House Boys Home, Sebastopol, and another big institution called Pleasant Creek Training Centre, which was not so pleasant. And I was there from when I was 5 to 21. And while I was there, I was even sexually abused as well, and physical abuse and traumatised as well. And when those things did happen, we had to just shut our mouths and not say a thing about them. We had to. And then it was like, there were different wards as well, toddlers, senior girls, Sign Ward and Bristol there was. And then after that, when I turned 21, that's when, before 21, it would have been about 17 that I started living out in the community in CRUs and started knowing about my housing choice rights and that. And then after that, Mum jumping the gun?
No, you're doing fine.
Yeah. After that, after I lived in the CRU, I moved out, because we had to do housing rights and dusting, cleaning, and we had to just keep going down to Pleasant Creek because that was the only place that we knew for the Work Education Centre. And then once I met my partner going back quite a few years ago after I left the CRU and I moved out into my flat, that's when I found out about my family on my mum's side, and that's when I moved to Melbourne. I did, and moved out towards Frankston Way, stayed out there, and I even went through some domestic violence as well while I was living with my partner, which I had to be hush hush, not say a thing. But I even went to an organisation that was in Ross House in the 90s, and it was called AMIDA. And AMIDA stands for more action, more, what is it, Pauline?
Action for more independence and dignity in accommodation.
Yeah, and that's when I was on the committee and that was when I was learning more about my rights, that we've got a voice to be heard and all this. And then later on, while I was still with him, this project came up about the Royal Commission into child abuse, sexual abuse and all that. And that's when I said to Pauline, because she told me about it, I remember. And I said to Pauline, they won't believe me. They'll think I'm making it all up. Pauline goes, give it a go. Go on, give it a go. So I did at the office where Pauline was, and I was crying, and I made my appointment. And then after that, I had another worker coming with me to all these meetings with the Royal Commission. And that's when I did start to believe that they weren't believing me then. They did, because they were saying there was other people that were from that home that was fitting your story. And that's when I was to be believed then. Then after that, I even went through domestic violence as well with my partner, because in 2004, first, I had a brain surgery, and that got rid of all the fits, which I'm happy about. But before the fits, he was like the ringleader, and he knew I couldn't remember things properly. And he was always making fun of my mind, writing things down, because he knew I couldn't remember them. But once I joined Reinforce, which is another organisation, which has been going since the 1980s, that's when I really didn't need him, because after 2004, I had the brain surgery. It was 2005 that I joined him. I'm joined Reinforce. And that's when he started to get the notice that I was not really there for him. And I gave him 3 chances as well. And it was that 3rd chance that I left him for good. And I even went through the Royal Commission having counselling. And while I was having counselling, I had big major panic attacks about telling my story about my childhood, what happened to me. And it took me right back into the institution, and those 3 men were swearing, yelling at me, saying, don't you say a thing to anybody, you're going to go to your grave with it. But no, it didn't happen, because I kept fighting. I did. And now, since I've left my partner, I can speak up more frequently. I can let people know what's been going on. And now that I've found out more about my Aboriginal background too, which I'm happy about, and I'm an auntie as well, and that we just need more people out there for the Indigenous and people who are not Indigenous to come forward and tell their stories, and even on domestic violence as well. Was that all right?
Thank you, Jane. You know, I'm always quite privileged to hear stories because they're very personal.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your story.
That's all right.
And for all those out there who have been silenced by domestic violence and all the nasties of the world, I think it's brave speaking up, and for those who can speak up, you're making the lives of others better, and you give others courage.
That's right.
Would anyone else like to comment?
Yes, I'd like to say I am so sorry, Jane, that you came across so difficult times, and it was horrible, and it should have never ever have happened to you. Your whole story is very heartfelt, and I'm so sorry. I'd like to share something with our group. I usually don't do this, but I think it's really fitting, and if you allow me to, I'd like to say like a dedication. Is that okay? Is that okay?
Yeah.
It'll take a few minutes, but I think it's the right timing.
Yeah.
I hope that's okay with you, Julie, as well, and Pauline.
Yes.
So yeah, so this
And can
is
I say something?
sure.
Since I've left my partner, because I gave him that 3 chances after my brain surgery, and it was that 3rd chance that I left him after he headlocked me, slapped me across the face and kept me hostage in the community house. And he never thought that I would leave him. He never thought that I would, because I was always scared of him. But now, since I have left him, my health's been a lot better. And I'm going to do this. I'm as free as a bird for the rest of my life, and I love it, because you only live once on this earth.
How about we're all born here? How about we all do that?
Yeah.
Yay! We are free as a bird. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
So like I said, those who can speak up are making the world a better place for others who still find it difficult. So Colette, over to you, Colette.
Thank you. So this is something that I'd like to share with you. I've got a whole website. I'm an advocate and a campaigner around violence, domestic violence and family violence. I just recently, a couple of weeks ago, finished off with an exhibition, an art exhibition at the Linden Project Space, where we looked at this, and I've got artwork in relation. But what I saw fit, because this is what I want to, I'm touched by Jane's story, because we all can have stories like this, and mine led me to do this website, which is a dedication of commemorating young, like women, children in such horrible situations. So I'd like to just quickly say what I do at meetings and gatherings, and other people do this as well around Australia, and I'd like it to go more and more public, but I see it fit here. So I'm sharing my screen. So it says, we publicly acknowledge at our interview here today the grief and loss, sadness and vulnerability of survivors and victims of family, gender-based and private violence. In recognition, we commemorate children, young people, adults and older adults surviving or who have died as a result of such violence. Let us take 30 seconds of silence for quiet contemplation, for change, and to reflect on hope, courage and healing for victims, our community and ourselves. So I think we can't have too much silence because people aren't used to it on air, but I just wanted to share this with you because I felt I can touch you've touched me, and I've got this thing going, and I am really sorry that this has happened to you, Jane.
Thanks.
Thank you for sharing that, Gula. It's beautiful, and I love that it's recognising the sadness, but also the hope and healing. And I think Jane is a fantastic role model. You know, I did see Jane when she was struggling with all of the abuse memories, the trauma, and she just didn't stop. It was so hard, and she didn't let herself be silenced. She kept going. It was tough but I know that she's actually, as Jane said, her health is better, her mental health is better. She actually has blossomed, and she is like a bird who's free at last. I saw that happen in a really a physical way, and just confronting the past was the thing that helped Jane heal, hard though it was.
Yeah. And
Yes.
yeah. Have you seen my story on ABC Lifeline, Jane's story?
No.
Well, if you Google that, you'll be able to see my story on ABC Lifeline, Julie and Galil, and that, and it's telling you about the Royal Commission and about my abuse. And then the other one is Tony Fitzgerald Award that I won off Jane telling her story in front of a crowd. Isn't that right, Pauline?
Yeah, so the Australian Human Rights Award, the Tony Fitzgerald Award, Jane won that a couple of years ago for her tireless advocacy around the Royal Commission, around institutional responses to child sexual abuse where she went around the country basically telling her story to anybody she could, to encourage people to speak and tell their stories. And yes, she won that award as a human rights advocate that year, which was fantastic. Good recognition, and about time, of a person with a disability as well.
That's right, because you will be believed and that. And then just after I left, that's when the ABC wanted me to tell the story about Jane's story on ABC Lifeline about the jail.
Yeah. We won't get into it too much, but Claire has artwork. Her focus is on gender-based violence and very powerful artwork. And when you were telling your story, Jane, one of Claire's artwork depicts a woman like with a shushing sign, and I would encourage everyone to have a look at Claire's artwork because it's so powerful, and it because of her focuses on gender-based violence, it's very topical and very relevant, very topical. We hope it won't be topical forever, and we hope that systems will be better education around family violence is better. But unfortunately, things take time to sort themselves out. But it's a big step, yeah. Art is a representation of society. So so it's really powerful. People can have a look at Claire's artwork.
And I'm really sorry, Jane, but the thing is that one woman dies, she's murdered a week. And if we really think about it, let's say a footballer was dying once a week, what will we do as a people, like, a famous footballers?
Yeah.
How would we be? Like, I always wonder that.
Well, to me, like, if one person dying every week, that wouldn't be good news. That wouldn't be.
It shouldn't be good news. It should be like crisis news.
That's right.
Except it's not.
No.
But yeah, I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done to keep uncovering, because it does get covered up, and that's what stops it being a big story.
That's right. Yeah. It's like being swept under the mat.
Yeah.
So, Jane, can I call you sister?
Yes. Or
auntie. What would you like? Auntie better?
Auntie.
Or
Auntie. Auntie.
Thank you, Auntie Jane.
That's okay, darling.
Yeah. So, Auntie Jane, you've made people hear you. You've told your story. You're in your power. You're wonderful. It's so exciting to have you in our program. We're so honoured and so privileged. What else would you like to say about, that your heart of hearts? What would you like everyone to know?
Well, I do crocheting and I do knitting, which I've been doing that since I was in the institution as well. But then there was always painting in me as well, because I'm Aboriginal. And sometimes I tell my story in painting on what happened in those days. And even like, because I always have birds and that on my paintings, and it's telling people that you only live once on this earth, that you might as well be free as a bird. And that, and even when I'm doing painting, I'm picturing other things as well in the painting. And that's one thing I love doing. And another thing I would love to do is go to Uluru. I would, for my holidays, and up to Darwin as well. I would love to do that, because I've never ever been up there in my entire life, and I would love to go up there where the spirit is of Uluru.
Wow, what a beautiful goal you've got. I hope it happens.
I hope too. I hope it happens. Yeah, definitely. Yes, because I just love it. I do. And like, I can remember that I was on this meeting as well. What was it called? PMG? No, not Pigs, Meat and Gravy. I can't remember, but it was in the 90s, Pauline, AGM. Oh, I can't remember what it was called, but it was when I was down at Western Port speaking out.
Oh yeah, well you were involved in Western Port Speaking Out's committee. Would that be it?
Yes. And
that was a self-advocacy group in Frankston.
Yep, that was, which is all gone now, which is
but you've done lots of things, Jane. With AMIDA, at one point we put out a video that went to all the people living in group homes.
Yeah.
And Jane was the star, and it was all about, if you live in a group home, you've got rights.
That's right, yes.
So, you know, you've got choices and you've got rights, and a lot of people, you know, living in group homes are it's like mini institutions, and they don't necessarily have a lot of say in the decisions that are made in their own home. The staff that work there are making a lot of the decisions, and they don't, you know, they work in their workplace. They don't think of this as someone's home where they should be making the decisions. So it's been a really hard thing to shift that culture.
That's right.
And we're hoping that's shifting, but yeah, it's a tough one.
That's right. And I can remember when I'm with Reinforced, do you remember that book that Reinforced did about people's stories? My story, Colin's, Amanda, and all that. So that's another thing that we did with Reinforced, is telling our stories on how self-advocacy started in the 80s and that as well. And do you want to say a few things, Pauline?
Well, I was going to say that's a really good little point to make, because AMIDA, which is now, you know, doing heaps of advocacy work for people around their housing and their NDIS, and getting people to tell their stories to the Disability Royal Commission, and, you know, we help manage the self-advocacy resource unit and do lots of things. We're huge. But we started from self-advocates who were coming together. A lot of them had grown up in institutions like Jane, or they'd, you know, had very excluded lives, not included in the community at all. Anyway, and coming together in the 80s and saying, we have to make the change. And they actually set up AMIDA back in the 80s and set up Reinforce, and worked really hard over the years to keep those organisations strong and growing. And, you know, like, it's blossomed. A whole lot of things have come out of that original group of people that, you know, were people with an intellectual disability just coming together and saying, we're going to have to make this change happen ourselves. And they did.
That's right. And another thing I just thought of, Pauline, I was even in the march, the two marches. One of them was in Melbourne. I've been in a few of them, but about the Aboriginals, about respecting the Aboriginals, and about
Black Lives Matter? Was that rally?
Black Lives Matter. I was in that rally, and it was getting the government to listen to us on what to expect to respect the Aboriginals into the community, and Torres Strait Islanders and all that as well. And the other one was about domestic violence, and I was in that rally as well. Wear purple, and it's for domestic violence. So I was in that rally with a lot of ladies who's been through the domestic violence, and that was a couple of years ago. And I can remember walking down in Swanson Street right to the library, and walking down right back to the start, and it was telling the government that message. Yes,
and we have to keep doing it, I think.
I do, yeah.
Definitely, I know recently, you know, the whole Black Lives Matter issue, like, it's not a new issue for Aboriginal people. Obviously, Aboriginal people have been locked up and, you know, terrible atrocities over the years. But yeah, still large numbers of people who are Indigenous, and also, you know, people from cold backgrounds who, you know, are people of colour coming into this country, and they get targeted by the police. You know, they get racially profiled by the police and pulled up more and searched more and locked up more, and all those things are still happening. So we definitely need to keep pushing on those issues as well.
That's right. And another thing I thought of was, now when you were just talking, I've got to think what it was. Right. Oh, Yeah, I'm in an organisation called First People's Disability Network, which is in Sydney, and that's for people with a disability, and I'm on their committee. And what I do is I pick up the things for them to do. You know, I mean not to do, but you know, like I tell them what's been going on so they can go through it. You know what I mean, Pauline?
You mean like, you know, help them decide what issues they might want to do some work on?
That's right, yes.
Bring
And
things to their attention.
that's right, definitely. And even like out in the outback as well, where there's a lot more things that needs fixing up with footpaths, roads, and even with people who've got to go to the hospital, they've got to get the plane to fly to the hospital there, because there's no big hospital nearby where those little towns are as well.
Heaps of issues.
Oh, what's happened? Oh,
Julie, you sharing your screen with us on purpose?
oh, that's all right. That's all right. And
So,
another organisation that I'm in is called Open Place, which is for people who've grown up in institutions in the last century. And that's when I did start my counselling, and that's when I did start my panic attacks. Going back, it would be about I've left him 8 years ago, so probably about 16 years ago. It is when I started these panic attacks, which I don't have anymore, which I am as free as a bird now, and it's a lot better for my health.
I think that, you know, that's something that I think it's good for people to know, is that even though now we're having a Disability Royal Commission, and there was the Royal Commission into institutional responses to child sexual abuse, and there've been the commissions into family violence, those you know, hearings that are happening now didn't happen sort of out of the blue. They just suddenly appeared and came, and, you know, thanks politicians for doing it. Actually, no, it was people like Jane, and I'm sure people like yourself, Julie and Goulet, working over the years, pushing to say this is an issue of national importance and we can't cover it up any longer. These are people's lives, but they're hidden. And it needs to be, you know, unless the community hears and, you know, makes restitution, deals with it in some way, and then allows healing to happen, then we as a community, you know, we've got these fundamental flaws. We've got these little kind of pockets of people who are excluded, abused, discriminated against. So, you know, advocacy plays a really important role in pushing to bring those stories to the attention of the wider community. And my work at AMIDA over the years has been very much that sort of role, trying to, you know, I've been really privileged to be in a place where I've been working with people who've been survivors of, you know, institutional abuse, and nobody was listening to them at all for years. And, you know, working with those people and holding together the space and the community has been a real privilege. And it's just so important that now the community is hearing those voices and recognising them and recording them and acknowledging the pain and the hurt that's been done. Because for so long, people have just been ignored,
That's
ignored. So easy to just ignore it. It's not happening if I don't see it and say it. But, you know, now they are seeing it and saying it. So it's really important, I think.
And it's like even in jails these days as well, with people with a disability and the Indigenous and the Torres Strait Islander people, that they are not being treated equally as well. They are in these prisons, which they should be treated equally like anyone else out there as well. And even if they are white people, even the same to them, they should be all treated equally and have the same equal right across the prison. They should.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, there's a chap within that is involved with you guys. I don't know his name, but I've met him a few times. Who sort of like was saying that people with disabilities don't belong in jails at times because of cognitive type of issues, and it's like back when colonisation, when
Yeah.
the boy was sent to Australia effectively for stealing a loaf of bread.
Mm.
It's quite similar to that sort of like example,
Mm.
and so we need to really look at why there is overrepresentation of people with disabilities, First Nations and the like, why there's overrepresentation of these people in the prison systems, and work out other ways to deal with some things, yeah.
Absolutely. I think,
Yeah.
you can look at things like the NDIS right now, and
Yeah, at the moment, that's a bit
it's
of a problem.
potentially support for an individual. That's the way they see it. But it's not actually just support for an individual. If individuals get the right support growing up and they're not excluded and they are included and they have their human rights respected, then 20 years down the track, they won't be committing crimes. They'll be, they'll be civilly integrated into the community like everybody is and have opportunities. That's so important, to have opportunities from an early age. So I think that the NDIS, the way they see it at the moment in the NDIA, in the government and the running of it, is keep it small, cut it down, don't give people, as much as they might need. Just, keep the spending down, all of this sort of pressure that's on it all the time. But actually, it's the best investment that they could make is to properly support members of the community who otherwise end up in the justice system. Does that cost money? Yes, it does. So, why wouldn't you support people properly to begin with so that they have the same opportunities as everyone else?
What? Sorry, Jane.
What, do you want me to go?
Yes, please.
It's like with these jails as well, because of these the Aboriginals, that these policemen, like there's been Aboriginals dying in these jails because they've not been treated right. They've not been treated equally. That's why we do these rallies, to get the word across, to tell the government to listen to us, not to be ignored. And there's been Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island people who have died in these prisons, because we've had the families of the people have had photos in the rallies telling the government to do their job properly, to stop these people, Aboriginals and Torres Strait Island being killed, or, not being looked after properly and all that.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a famous quote, I don't know who said it, that the sign of a good society is how we look after the most vulnerable. And what I've found in my work, because I've worked in lots of different places now, and so when we're talking about the prison systems and different public things in society, a lot of them are run by Anglo-Saxon middle class people, and so what I've found is that when programs are designed and input from South Africans primarily, that these programs, which are taxpayer funded, work so much better, So the work that you guys do is absolutely so crucial for society. So yeah.
I've got a good example of that, actually. There's, at the moment, this Disability Royal Commission is running. When they were first setting it up, they had a couple of workshops with people with disability and people from First Nations. And Jane was actually able to represent AMIDA at both of those workshops, where she was able to not only use her own lived experience, but also the fact that she'd been involved in the Institutional Responses to Child Sexual Abuse Royal Commission. So she knew all about Royal Commissions as well. I mean, this woman is the expert.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
So that was great that they actually listened to, people. And since then, a lot of people have been saying, you know, we really want to tell our stories, but the way the Royal Commission is set up, if you tell your story, it's private for the life of the Royal Commission, but then they publish the Royal Commission at the end and all the stories are public. So they've actually, yeah, I know. So people with disability have been saying, no, you're going to have to change the rules for this Royal Commission, because we still live in these service provider locations with workers that we want to tell you about. And if you make it public at the end of the Royal Commission, we're not safe. So, you know, so they're listening to that voice too now and changing that rule so that there will be ongoing confidentiality, which is fantastic. So, you know, the government is slow, but eventually they do, you know, the wheels turn slow. But if you keep telling your story, eventually I think, you know, you'll get things to change in the way they need to, because it's only kind of sensible that they change sometimes, and good sense, hopefully, you know, rules in the end.
Well,
But yeah,
I can
thanks,
remember
Jane, because you raised those things.
Yeah, and I can remember me travelling around with the Royal Commission, and when I went up into my old town where I was living, and when I'd done the speech up there about what happened in that institution, there was a couple of people that were living in that institution that were living in the community, but in CRUs there in store. They wanted to come and tell their stories, but the problem was the staff said, no, you're not going to go and tell that story to them. You're going to just shut up like that, which was not right.
Jane, for all those listening, can you tell us what CRU stands for?
Say that again. Oh, CRUs, Community Residential Units. And I can remember in the 80s when it was called CRUs as well. So it's Community Residential Units. And I can even remember that this was at school with people having problems speaking in that we used to have ITA, which was called, what is it? ITA, it was reading, but you know what I mean? 2 words, 2 O's are oo, and O and L is owl. So that was our reading in the institution in those days. Yeah,
that's right. They did call them community residential units. Sounds really like you'd definitely want to live one of those, wouldn't you?
I know.
No, not. So now they call them group homes. It sounds a bit more friendly, but actually a lot of the time it's not necessarily easy living. I mean, you don't get actually a choice about who you share your home with. So somebody else chooses the people that move in. The people that already live there should choose, surely.
That's right.
But no. And you don't get to choose who the staff are that you work with in the house. So with the NDIA, there is the possibility of that changing, but it's really hard to unlock that system, because at the moment service providers run individual houses and they choose the staff. Whereas if you have a package of NDIA money and you live in your own house or you rent a house, you choose who comes in your door. You choose who provides you the support. And if you don't like that service provider, you can say, I'm going to choose somebody else and go with another company. But with the CRUs, the group homes, those service providers are kind of pretty much locked into the house and you don't get a lot of choice at all. So from time to time, you get a good mix of people living there and you're happy, but then somebody leaves and someone else moves in who you really don't get along with at all. And it can be really, really, like, it can impact you on your whole life, the fact that you're having to share your home with someone you don't get along with at all. And there's lots of examples of even like more than just not getting along, of actual violence and abuse in those group homes. So it's not the best system. And again, the promise of the NDIA was that that would unlock a bit. But when people do get approval for, it's called now Specialist Disability Accommodation, SDA, when people get approval for that, they rarely get it to live on their own, and they have to fight to have it to live on their own. They're told they have to share because from the government's point of view, it's cheaper. But this means that for your whole life, pretty much, from when you move out of home, you might be in shared accommodation with people you don't have any choice about, which is just not okay. The rest of society does not expect that that will be their housing career. The rest of society expects that they'll have a whole lot of choice about who they live with and where. that maybe at the end of their life, they might be in a nursing home for a year or something, maybe. But this is people's whole life in shared accommodation with no choice about it. If you need support, that's where you go. So, yeah, there's a lot that needs changing. And our advocates, we have advocates that specialise in the NDIA, and they're fighting all the time for individuals who want to have that freedom of choice that the rest of us have, to just be able to choose who you live with and who supports you.
I can remember, Pauline, that we went around with Fuffy and Sarah into these CRUs and institutions in those days, and then in 2000 it was, and we're talking about the standards, which there was about 12 or 16 standards at that time, and we're trying to get the word to the staff and to talk to the clients about that they have got that voice to be heard, that they are to be listened to and not to be ignored as well. And even I saw some of my old friends from the institution when we were doing that travelling as well, I remember. So it was,
and that's a good thing that, you know, they try and improve the standards of those places. But, you know, if you have to keep changing and pushing and trying to improve the standards of the way in which people are treated in a certain housing setup, you might start to think there's something wrong with the setup in the first place. Maybe it's the structure. You're trying to make something work that maybe is always doomed to not work because there's not a whole lot of individual choice and control in that setup. So, yeah, it's great to push for better standards with the ones that are out there, but more important that the government allows people the choice and allows them to live, you know, with one other if they want to, or just on their own, even with support coming in.
yeah, and
Some of these houses are as big as 5 residents, 6 residents. You know, I've worked with people in a house where there were 9 residents. You know, that's a pretty hard ask for anybody to live with 9 strangers.
Yeah, and it's like with this COVID virus at the moment too, that I've got a few things to say on this, that these CRUs, these clients wouldn't have even had their first jab.
They've been very slow. They've been very slow. They were supposed to be first priority.
That's right. And nursing homes as well. And even like last year when we had that big long lockdown that the government never did their job properly, that people were dying as well as these nursing homes.
It's a really good example, Jane, because we're often told that people are better looked after if they're in a group home, that, you know, this isn't about, you know, taking away choice. This is about giving people professional, proper support. But here we go, perfect example, when they made first priority for vaccines, something like, you know, only 5% of people living in group homes have had their first shot, and they were supposed to be first priority.
That's right.
It actually doesn't work out that you're better looked after if you're in a form of institutional housing. It actually often means that you're just ignored and forgotten once again.
That's right, because the people, the elderly that died last year, there was about 70 of them or more, I don't know, but, you know, they should have been the prior part for the vaccine.
Yeah.
They should have been.
Yes, Jane. I think it was more than 600 actually that died from our nursing homes in Australia.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really bad. It is.
Yeah.
But what don't?
No, go on.
But the people who are listening to our story today, it will be a good idea to talk to the Royal Commission if you're going through abuse or neglect, sexually abused, physical abuse, traumatised, domestic violence. There is organisations that are out there that will believe you and they will help you. And even for the Aboriginals as well, which they helped me when I left my partner, when I took him to court and all this, because I was being believed. So if anyone's out there listening to this, it would be great if they are going through a similar stage that I went through, is to think for themselves to make sure that they can get the help that they need, because you only live once on the earth. And if you want to get out, make a life of your own, feel free as a bird, you're really going on the right track.
Auntie Jane, what keeps you going? Like, what, you've got so much fire in your belly? What do you do to keep you really healthy? Like, how do you look after yourself?
Well, what I do is sometimes I have a little nap during the day, but I go down to the homeless and I have Zoom meetings with Reinforce and AMIDA and SARU, which is for Self-Advocacy Resource Unit. And I even like do crocheting, knitting, painting, watch TV sometimes. I go outside for catch up with friends and all this, because ever since I've lived on my own, I look at the future, that you only live once on this earth. What you want to do, you've got to aim for it. You can't just keep going back. You've got to aim and fight for it. So that's how I see it ever since I've left Dickhead, sorry. But but I just feel a lot happier. I am now, and my health is a lot better. Yes, because I've got a hell of a lot more friends now than when I did when I was in Cranbourne, and I just feel opened up now, and I know that I will be believed. So that's why I'm opened up now. Yeah.
So, and just coming back to AMIDA, we've actually got a couple of people working on helping people tell their story to the Disability Royal Commission. So if anybody listening does want to tell their story, the Commission's going to run for at least another year, and we're hoping it might get extended even, because last year was really hard for anybody to tell their story because of lockdowns, and 2020, was just such a difficult year for everybody. But there's the chance to, if people want to tell their story to the Disability Royal Commission, to get some support from advocacy groups like AMIDA, and lots of other advocacy groups have workers helping people tell their story. And it can be, it doesn't have to, you don't have to think, oh, my story's not worth telling because, I didn't suffer massive abuse or those things. It doesn't matter. If you've been excluded because you have a disability from anything in your life, if you feel you've been discriminated ever or not treated as well as other people, if you feel like, because society isn't, kind of as inclusive as it needs to be, and your opportunities weren't the same as others, you can tell that story to the Disability Royal Commission too. So it's quite broad. It looks at all aspects, whether it be transport, housing, education, employment. If you feel like you've never been given a chance to have a job and the only offers you ever had were sheltered workshops and, token sort of roles, that's something that's worth telling the Royal Commission too. So, there's an openness to hear people's experience, which is good.
Correct me if I'm wrong, ladies. Are there toolkits? Joe was talking about the standards. Are there toolkits for? I think I've seen toolkits for people that live in group homes that were provided by SARU. Is that correct?
Pauline?
Well, we've got the video I was talking about earlier, which is for people in group homes and came with a booklet. Yeah, that one's on rights. But also Reinforce did a really good video called My House, My Home, My Rights, which was all different sort of situations in group homes. And I'm pretty sure both of those are available on, if not Sarah's website, AMIDA's and Reinforce's. And you can still get copies of those on DVD from both AMIDA and Reinforce. But SARU does have a lot of different videos on its Voices Together website, and many of those are people's experiences of living in group homes and,
What I'll do is I'll put up the website, AMIDA's website, for people to have a look at. So this is their website. It's at amida.org.au. So this is what it looks like, their website, AMIDA's. And down here is their address, the email address and phone number. So the phone number is 9650-2722. Am I correct, Pauline, with all this?
Yep, you've got it right.
And then we've got AMIDA, AMIDA at amida.org.au, and it's at Ross House in Flinders Lane. So, so look at this. This will be very handy for you people.
I think so. And you can see on the side there, it's got latest news. It's got something about the Disability Royal Commission down the bottom, and also something about our new project, Opening Doors. So we did another website called Opening Doors. That's at openingdoors.net.au.
Yes.
If you want to bring that one up too, there it is. So that one's a really good video website. So lots of people's lived experience of what it's like to try and rent, private rental, how you go about it. We've got, information in there about even the most simple things like how you apply for rental housing, and if you do get in, what do you have to do, and how do you deal with a real estate agent, what happens if you get discriminated against, all that sort of stuff. So it's,
we'll talk more about this at our next program. What do you think, Pauline, for that one?
Sounds good.
Yeah. That'd be good. Yeah.
And Pauline, can you take a photo of us?
A photo?
Yeah.
Sure, I can do that.
I love photos.
I know that you can do screenshots, but if I do it with my phone, I can send it to you real quick. There you go.
Maybe you can send it to me too, because sometimes I forget to do these things that we need proof that we exist, as people that do funding agreements are aware of. So Gule, are we sort of like at the end of?
It's 12 o'clock.
Yeah, I would say that we could go for a few more minutes.
We have to do funding and knowledge also.
Is there anything that Auntie Jane you wanna say that you didn't have a chance to?
Well, with Land Force, like anyone out there who would like to join a organisation which you've got to have an intellectual disability, there's Reinforce, which is in Ross House. Is there a thing about Reinforce there?
I'll look at it.
Yeah, and then.
Yeah, Reinforce has been going
since
early 80s.
Yeah.
Is it 1980, Jane?
Yeah, 1980. I was living in Stawell then.
the first South Advocacy group in Australia.
Yeah, that's right. So that's when some of the people from Reinforce, I can remember going to DHS and sleeping on their doorway, telling them to close these institutions down to try and get the word across. Isn't it right, Pauline?
Correct. Yeah. And also the other thing too, Jane, is the radio show. So
3CR Radio.
Yeah, Reinforce and AMIDA began doing the Raising Our Voices radio show, and that was in 1987. So that's been going for a long time now, for a half an hour on the 6 o'clock on the.
I found Raising Our Voices.
Yeah, that's it. Yes, that's it.
I couldn't find the other one. Sorry, Reinforce.
Right,
so if on our website there, we actually have our YouTube channel with copies of our radio show. So there's nothing to see, obviously, because it's just audio, but you can hear the radio shows that have been posted further down. I think we have. And
I've been on there too, about domestic violence and about the Aboriginals and about closing institutions down and a lot of other things as well.
You can see that some of those recent shows have been about Voice at the Table.
That's right.
Voice at the Table is another project. It came out of the Self Advocacy Resource Unit, thinking about the fact that lots and lots of boards and committees want the voice of people with a disability on their committees, on their boards, but people with disability haven't necessarily got anywhere to go to be trained on how you do that. And so Voice at the Table set up some training for people, but then they've also said, well, it's not just the people with disability that need to be trained, it's the boards and committees that need to be trained too. So now they do inclusive training to organisations about how to properly support and include people. If you want their voice, you have to properly respect and support and pay people
for their lived
contribute.
experience.
Exactly, exactly. So, so that project's been running for a few years now, and they've done lots and lots of work and supported lots of organisations and people. There are reps who've done that training who now sit on the board at Parliament House and in all sorts of settings. And they've got funding at the moment to run until I think it's June next year, and they're going to be doing some more training soon for people, and they're doing inclusive training with all sorts of bodies, I think with the Victorian Electoral Commission and other places about, how to be more inclusive of people with a disability.
Yeah.
So that's been a really good project as well.
Yeah.
What an amazing organisation, that does so much work.
Oh God, yeah, they're definitely, because we need a lot more people out there to be like me as well, and to be as free as a bird, and that's why I've got this tattoo here, as free as a bird. I have, after I left Dickhead. Yes, so I just love it, I really do.
Well, one of the things that I think that we realised at AMIDA is that we could have stayed really small and just done advocacy, but when the Self-Advocacy Resource Unit got funded, we joined together with Reinforce, Brain Injury Matters and a community arts organisation to try and get the Self-Advocacy Resource Unit going. And part of its job is actually to grow more self-advocacy groups and support them to get stronger and, to have their voice heard. So, that kind of, it's a bit sort of, what's the word? Once you get into that, it's like you just want to keep doing it because there's so many other ways that groups could grow and be supported and so many groups that are needed. So in the last few years, a group's been set up for people who've got a cognitive impairment, whether it's brain injury or intellectual disability, who've had involvement in the criminal justice system. We were talking before about that's a big issue. So now there's a self-advocacy group made up of people with that lived experience, and they're really pushing for the government to improve those matters, those issues. There's a Positive Powerful Parents group that are a group made up of people with intellectual disability or brain injury who've had their children taken away from them by Child Protective Services, and how, that's a major issue, particularly for people with a disability.
And even Indigenous as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So there's lots and lots of groups who, have disability, but then there's something else in their lives that's a particular issue, and they're forming self-advocacy groups to push on those issues. And but often they're really small groups, and they don't have a bookkeeper, and they don't have incorporation, and they don't have all of those things that you need to get funding. So AMIDA, because it's been there for a while and has all those things, we can actually auspice those groups and help them with, we've got a back office that can do the payroll and do all the things, the tax that needs to be done, and they can just do their projects, which is fantastic. So we're really glad to be able to see the growth that's been happening.
Yeah, and I was just thinking while you're talking, with our, the next radio show or whatever this is, I was thinking having you, me, and like Colin Hisco to it, and one of the groups from Gippsland or that with the self-advocacy and what they've been doing with their problems, you know what I mean? Like, especially with that flooding at the moment.
Yeah, dreadful.
Trafalgar, yeah. Or grandparents, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, there's lots of opportunities, I think, that we can use to get people's voices out there.
Yeah.
Ladies, I hate to end our really robust conversation. So I'd like to thank both of you for attending today. This is a public holiday. It's the Queen's birthday holiday, and it's also Julie's birthday. So there you go.
Hey, happy birthday.
So
Happy
I
birthday.
had a lovely weekend, and even though I'm working, it was lovely to chat with both of you.
Yeah,
My co-host, it's always a pleasure to work with Gulair.
and it was
I
good
think
seeing
it's
you
wonderful
again,
too.
Julie.
So we have to do the acknowledgement to the funding body. So that's the end of our program. You can hang around if you wish, and I'll do the funding acknowledgement, Gulair.
Okay.
Would you like to read it out, Gulair?
Sure, you'll need to move it for me. So, acknowledgement. We would like to thank the MRC Northwest Management for their support they give to the D&D Your Life, Your Voice project. This YouTube channel is funded by the Victorian DHHS and Moreland City Council. Diversity and Disability would like to thank them for providing funding to this progressive thinking out of the box project, especially in these times, living through COVID and for hang on, we just removed COVID-19
Go the other
as
one.
so Moreland City Council like to thank them for providing, especially in these times. Just up a bit, please. Being difficult, the COVID-19 has been difficult for people with disabilities. Being just up a bit more, please.
It's not working. Sorry.
Oh, isolation. Okay, it isn't. So we'd like to acknowledge self-advocates as well. That's what was down the bottom. Yeah.
And also, if you'd like to contact us, you contact us on D&D Your Life, Your Voice at gmail.com. And that's the end of our program for today. I wish everyone they have a great day and a great holiday, and we'll see you in two weeks' time.
Thank you.